Welcome back to another day of reading Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. Today we're going to be reading Volume 2, Chapters 11 and 12. These things happened last winter, sir, said Miss Dean. Hardly more than a year ago. Last winter, I did not think at another 12 months' end I should be amusing a stranger to the family with relating them. Yet, who knows how long you'll be a stranger? You're too young to rest, always contented, living by yourself. And I, some way fancy, could see Catherine Linton. No one could see Catherine Linton and not love her. You smile, but why do you look so lively and interested when I talk about her? And why have you asked me to hang her picture over the fireplace? And why? Stop, my good friend, I cried. It may be very possible that I should love her, but would she love me? I doubt it too much to venture my tranquillity by running into temptation. And then my home is not here. I'm of my world, of the busy world, and to its arms I must return. Go on. Was Catherine obedient to her father's commands? She was, continued the housekeeper. Her affection for him was still the chief sentiment in her heart, and he spoke without anger. He spoke in the deep tenderness of one about to leave his treasure amid perils and foes, where he remembered words would be the only aid that he could bequeath to guide her. He said to me a few days afterwards, I wish my nephew would write Ellen or call. Tell me sincerely that you think of him. Is he changed for the better, or is there a prospect of improvement as he grows a man? He's very delicate, sir, I replied, and scarcely likely to reach manhood. But this, I can say, does not resemble his father. He does not resemble his father, and if Catherine had the misfortune to marry him, he would not be beyond her control unless she were extremely and foolishly indulgent. However, Mash, you'll have plenty of time to get acquainted with him and see someone he would suit her. It wants 4 years and more of his being of age. Edgar sighed, and walking to the window looked out toward Gimerton Kirk. It was a misty afternoon, but the February sun shone dimly, and we could just distinguish the 2 fir trees in the yard and the sparsely scattered gravestones. I've prayed often, he half soliloquized, for the approach of what is coming, and now I begin to shrink. I fear it. I thought the memory of the hour I came down that glen a bridegroom, would be less sweet than the anticipation that I was soon, in a few months or possibly weeks, to be carried up and laid in its lonely hollow. Ellen, I've been very happy with my little Kathy. Though winter nights and summer days she was a living hope at my side, but I've been as happy musing by myself among those stones under the old church, lying through the long June evenings on the green mound of her mother's grave, and yearning for the time that I might lie beneath it. What can I do for Kathleen? How must I quit her? I'd not care one moment for Linton being Heathcliff's son, nor for his taking her from me, if he could console her for my loss. I'd not care that Heathcliff gained his end and triumphed in robbing me of his lost blessing. But should Linton be unworthy, only a feeble tool to his father, I cannot abandon her to him, and hard though it be to crushing her buoyant spirit, I must persevere in making her sad while I live, and leaving her solitary when I die. Darling, I'd rather resign her to God and lay her in the earth before me. Resign her to God as it is, sir, I answered, and if we should lose you, which may he forbid under his providence, I'll stand her friend and counsel to the last. Miss Catherine is a good girl. I don't fear that she will go wilfully wrong, and people who do their duty are always finely rewarded. Spring advanced, yet my master gathered no real strength, though he resumed his walks on the ground with his daughter. To her inexperienced notions, this itself was a sign of convalescence, and that then his cheek was often flushed with his eyes, and his eyes were bright. She felt sure of his recovering. On her 17th birthday she did not visit the churchyard. It was raining, and I observed, "You'll surely not go out tonight, sir," he answered. "No, I'll defer it this year a little longer." He wrote again to Linton, expressing his great desire to see him, and had the invalid been presentable, I've no doubt his father would have permitted him to come. As it was being instructed, he returned an answer intimating that Mr. Heathcliff objected to his calling at the Grange, but his uncle's kind remembrance delighted him, and he hoped to meet him sometimes in the rambles, and personally to petition that his cousin and he might not remain long so utterly divided. That part of the letter was simple and probably his own. Heathcliff knew he could plead eloquently through the Catherine's company then. Enough for Catherine's company. Then, I do not ask, he said, that she may visit here, but am I never to see her, because her father forbids me to go to her home, and you forbid her to come to mine? Do now and then ride with her toward the height, and let us exchange a few words in your presence. We have done nothing to deserve this separation, and you are not angry with me. You have no reason to dislike me. You allow yourself to your uncle. Send me a kind note tomorrow, and leave to join you anywhere you please, except at Thrushcross Grange. I believe an interview would convince you that my father's character is not mine. He affirms I am more your nephew than his son, and though I have faults which render me unworthy to Catherine, she has excused them, and for her sake you should also. You inquire about my health. It is after my health it is better, but while I remain cut off from all hope and doomed to solitude or the society of those who never did and never will like me, how can I be cheerful and well? Edgar, though he felt for the boy, could not consent to grant his request because he simply could not accompany Catherine. He said in summer perhaps they might meet. Meantime, he wished to continue writing in intervals and engaged to give him what advice and comfort he was able to letter. Being well aware of his hard position in the family, Linton complied, and he had been unrestrained, would probably have spoiled all by filling his epistles with complaints and lamentations, but his father kept a sharp watch over him, and of course insisted on every line that the master being sent shown. So instead of penning his particular personal sufferings and distresses, the themes constantly uppermost in his thoughts, he harped on the cruel obligation of being held asunder from his friend in love. He gently intimated that Mr. Linton must allow an interview soon, or she should fear he was purposely deceiving him with empty promise. Carthy was a powerful ally at home, and between them they at length persuaded the master to acquiesce in their having a ride or a walk together about once a week, under my guardianship, and on the moors nearest the Grange, for June found him still declining, and though he had set aside yearly the portion of his income for my young lady's fortune, he had a natural desire that she might retain or at least return some time to the house of her ancestors, and he considered her only prospect of doing that was by a union with his heir. He had no idea that the latter was failing almost as fast as himself, nor had anyone, I believe. No doctor visited the Heights, no one saw Master Heathcliff to make report of his condition among us. I, for my part, began to fancy my forebodings were false, and that he must be actually rallying when he mentioned riding and walking the moor, and seemed so earnest in pursuing his object. I could not picture a father treating a dying child as tyrannically and wicked as I afterwards learned Heathcliff had treated him. To compel him apparent eagerness, his efforts were redoubling the more imminently. His avaricious and unfeeling plans were threatened with defeat by death. Chapter 12. Summer was already past his prime when Edgar reluctantly yielded his assistance to the entreaties, and Catherine and I set out on our first ride to join her cousin. It was a close, sultry day, devoid of sunshine, but with a sky too dappled and hazy to threaten rain, and our place of meeting had been fixed at the guidestone by the crossing. On arriving there, however, a little herd-boy dispatched as a messenger told us that Master Linton were just at the side of the Heights, and he'd be much obliged to us to gang on a bit further. Then Master Linton has forgotten the first injunction of his uncle, I observed. He bid us keep on the Grange land, and here we are off at once. Well, he'll turn our horses' heads round when we reach him, answered my companion. Our excursion shall lie towards home. But when we reached him, and that was scarcely a quarter of a mile from his own door, we found he had no horse, and he was forced to dismount and leave ours to graze. He lay on the hearth awaiting our approach, and did not arise till we came within a few yards. Then he walked so feebly and looked so pale, I immediately exclaimed, "Why, Master Heathcliff, you are not fit for enjoying a ramble this morning. How ill you do look!" Catherine surveyed him with grief and astonishment, and changed the ejaculation of a joy on her lips, the one of alarm, and the congratulation on the long postponed meeting, to an anxious inquiry whether he was worse than usual. No, better, he panted, trembling and retaining her hand as if he needed its support, while his large blue eyes wandered timidly over her. The hollowness rounded them, transforming to haggard wildness, and the languid expression they once possessed. But you have been worse, persisted his cousin. Worse than when I saw you last. You are thinner, and I'm tired, he interrupted hurriedly. It's not too hot for walking. Let us rest here, and in the morning. I often feel sick. Papa says I grow so fast. Badly satisfied, Kathy sat down, and he reclined beside her. There is something like your paradise, said she, making an effort at cheerfulness. You recollect the 2 days we agreed to spend in the place, the way each thought pleasantest. This is nearly yours, only there are clouds, but then they are so soft and mellow it is nicer than sunshine. Next week, if you can, we'll ride down to the Grange Park and try mine. Linton did not appear to remember what she was talking of, and he had evidently great difficulty in sustaining any kind of conversation. His lack of interest in the subject she started, and his equal incapacity to contribute to her entertainment were so obvious that she could not conceal her disappointment. The indefinite alteration had come over his whole person and manner. The pettishness that might be caressed into fondness had yielded to a listless apathy. There were less of a peevish temper of a child which frets and teases on purpose to be soothed, the more of the self-absorbed moroseness of a confirmed invalid, repelling consolation and ready to regard the good-humored mirth of others as an insult. Catherine perceived, as well as I did, that he held it rather a punishment than a gratification to endure our company, and she made no scruple of promising presently to depart. The proposal unexpectedly roused Linton from his lethargy and threw him into a strange state of agitation. He glanced fearfully towards the heights, begging she would remain another half-hour at least. But I think, said Kathy, you'd be more comfortable at home than sitting here, and I cannot amuse you today. I see by my tales and songs, the chatter you have grown wiser than I. In these 6 months you have little taste for my diversions now, or else if I could amuse you, I'd willingly stay. Stay to rest yourself, he replied, and Catherine, don't think or say that I am very unwell. It is the heavy weather and heat that make me dull, and I walked about before you came a great deal from me. Tell uncle I'm in tolerable health, will you? I'll tell him that you say so, Linton. I couldn't affirm that you are, observed the young lady, wondering in his pertinacious assertion of what was evidently an untruth. And be here again next Thursday, continued he, shunning her puzzled gaze, and give him my thanks for permitting you to come. My best thanks, Catherine. And if you did meet my father and he asked you about me, don't lead him to suppose that I've been extremely silent and stupid. Don't look sad and downcast as you are doing. He'll be angry. I care nothing for his anger, exclaimed Catherine, imagining she would be its object. But I do, said her cousin, shuddering. Don't provoke him against me, Catherine, for he is very hard. Is he severe to you, Master Heathcliff? I inquired. Has he grown weary of indulgence and passed from passive to active hatred? Linton looked at me but did not answer, and after keeping her seat by his side for another 10 minutes, during which his head fell drowsily on his breast, and he uttered nothing except suppressed moans of exhaustion or pain, Cathy began to seek solace in looking for bilberries and sharing the produce of her riches with me. She did not offer them to him, for she saw no further notice, or would only weary and annoy. It is for half an hour now, Ellen, she whispered in my ear at last. I can't tell what we should stay. He's asleep and Papa will be wanting us back. I can tell why we shouldn't stay. Well, we must not leave him asleep, I answered. Wait till he wakes and be patient. You are mighty eager to set off, but you longing to see poor Linton has so evaporated. Why did he wish to see me? She returned, Catherine, in his crossest humours formerly. I liked him better than I do in his present curious mood. It's just as if it were a task he was compelled to perform the interview for fear his father would scold him. But I'm hardly going to come to give Mr. Heathcliff pleasure, whatever reason he may have for ordering Linton to undergo the penance. And though I'm glad he's better in health, I'm sorry he's much less pleasant and so much less affectionate than me. You think he is better in health then? I asked. Yes, she answered, because he's always made such a great deal of suffering, you know. He is not tolerably well as he told me to tell Papa, but he's better, very likely. Then you differ with me, Mr. Cathy, I remarked. I should conjecture him to be far worse. Linton was standing from his slumber in bewildered terror, and asked if ever anyone had called his name. No, said Catherine, unless you in dreams. I cannot conceive how you managed to doze out of doors in the morning. I thought I heard my father, he gasped, glancing up to the frowning Nab above us. Are you sure no one spoke? Quite sure, replied the cousin. Only Ellen and I were disputing concerning your health, and are you truly stronger, Linton, that when we were separated in winter? If you be, I'm certain one thing is not stronger. Your regards for me speak, are you? The tears gushed from Linton's eyes as he answered, Yes, I am. And still under the spell of the imaginary voice, his gaze wandered up and down to detect his own. Cathy rose. For today we must part, she said, and I won't conceal that I have been sadly disappointed with our meeting, though I'll mention it to nobody but you. Not that I stand in awe of Mr. Heathcliff. Hush, murmured Linton. For God's sake, hush, he's coming. And he clung to Catherine's arm, striving to detain her, but at the announcement she hastily disengaged herself and whistled to Minnie, who obeyed her like a dog. I'll be here next Thursday, she cried, springing to the saddle. Goodbye, quick, Ellen. And so we left him, scarcely conscious of our departure, so absorbed that he was anticipating his father's reproach. Before we reached home, Catherine, displeasure softened into a perplexed sensation of pity and regret, largely blended with vague, uneasy doubts about Linton's actual circumstances, physical and social, in which I partook, though I counselled her not to say much, for a second journey would make us better judges. My master requested an account on our ongoings. His nephew offered as thanks. It was truly delivered. Miss Cathy gently touching on the rest, I also threw little light on the inquiries, for I hardly knew what to hide and what to reveal. Chapter 13 for next time. Thank you for listening.